All right. Now we're going to go back and do a tune that this band's never done, and I think only the three of us played maybe like one time, like 15, 18 years ago. This is on an album called COELACANTH. Now, in the same way that on Terpsichore I had this concept of the Talking Heads and the Steely Dan and the Police and all that stuff, on COELACANTH I kind of wanted to do a Motown record. I kind of wanted to do like a Motown atheist, skeptic, science Motown, one of those tropes, I had seen this documentary called Standing in the Shadows of Motown, which is wonderful. If you've never seen it, it's really, really interesting and fascinating. And it talks about the Funk Brothers. Now, the Funk Brothers were the band that recorded all of the Motown hits. They have more hits than the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and the Beach Boys combined. That band that backed the Supremes and Marvin Gaye and the Temptations and Stevie Wonder and all those. It's like the same 12 guys. They did all these studio sessions. I think it's on Hulu. I believe it's on Hulu. Check it out. It's called Standing in the Shadows of Motown. So I watched this and I thought, oh, this is really, really cool because they distilled that Motown sound. So I know. So what I wanted to do was, especially in this song is called Heaven Must Be Boring, okay, which is sort of, I get into the, it's one of the earlier sort of philosoph-funk kind of things that I worked on, this idea of like, anything for eternity is meaningless, like whether it's good or bad. Like being in hell forever is meaningless because it's like forever, and being in heaven is kind of meaningless because it's forever. So this idea of heaven must be boring. Again, it borrows a bit from Talking Heads, a song called Heaven. In heaven there's a bar where nothing ever happens, sort of a nod to that. But I want to break down and show how I incorporated guitar cliches into this Motown song. Now, what's a guitar cliche? This guitar has certain shapes that it loves its players to play. And one of those shapes is a D chord, which is this. You see this all the time. And what's cool is because it has these sort of open strings, you can mess around and do all these cool little D variations. D suspended, sort of a D7 or D7 this way, D9, and you're barely moving your hand. And then every guitarist at some point puts their hand in the wrong place and they go, and it's like, oh, that's cool. What's that? Oh, that's cool too. What's that about? It's like, oh, that's not as cool. But that's kind of cool. And every guitarist at some point does this song that has these D shapes up and down the neck. John Anderson from Yes loves it. Man conceived a moment's answers to the dream, and you and I. It's the whole tune is that, not the whole tune, but a whole chunk of that song is that. Another Yes song, what you gonna do when the lightning strikes and hits you? Or, it's like the same thing, right? So John Anderson loves it, but what Yes does is they expand on those ideas. So I wanted to do that, but sort of hide it, so it doesn't quite sound obvious. And the way I wanted to do that was not just hide it with what the band's doing, but what the guitar's doing, what the bass is doing, and what the vocals are doing. Now, for anyone that listens to Motown, you know that James Jamerson was the bass player that played on pretty much all those things. And James Jamerson was ridiculously talented. He came up with these bass parts that were so interesting and cool. We're going to give a little example of that. See if you recognize this song and listen to what Vinnie's doing on the bass, right? We're good? And just, this is a James Jamerson part. It's a very simple progression, but how James fills it out is really, really cool. So here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So, Ain't No Mountain, obviously. Now, he very easily could have just gone boom, 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 but he didn't do that. He came up with this really, really cool part. So, in this intro, I wanted to have a bit of a James Jamerson bass part happening. So, we're going to do this. So, what happens at the front is just... right? Super cliched guitar part. Every folk singer, every guitarist at some point does that thing. But instead of Vinnie just playing the root notes, he does this cool figure, which sounds like this. 2, 3, 4. Just adds this like, oh, okay, we're going to hide the cliched guitar part. Now, the bass part essentially has the same pattern 3 out of the 4 times. He has to change one note. So here's the first pattern, right? And then the third time he does it, it goes like this. Hear the difference? Because it has to fit over this chord that has an F in it. So it's bam 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 bam, and then third time bam 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 bam, which you don't even really hear because it's kind of going by. But if it's wrong, you hear it. But it's just cool, and it just adds this whole really cool, fun thing. So there's that. That was the first guitar cliche. The second guitar cliche I wanted to incorporate was this guitar cliche that you hear all the time. Right? It's the Dear Prudence thing. It's a D with just a descending, Dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? It's also in Rush. Why try? No way. This feeling inside me says this time I was gonna fly by night. Okay, so it's also an Eric Clapton thing. But I didn't want it to sound like that. I kind of wanted to hide it. So again, the guitar drops out, just the piano plays through there, but that's what happens in the chorus. So it's just this way of using tropes, but not just like putting them in people's faces, but sort of hiding them and then being able to use the melody on top of that in the best way possible. So yeah, right? Okay. To build the Motown sound, we have, again, a busy bass outlining, but not necessarily playing the roots of the chord. CJ has to take there's normally 3 guitarists on all those Motown songs. So CJ's playing like 2 guitar parts, I'm playing 1 guitar part. So we start with CJ, this is in the verse, just playing offbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Very simple. It's a nice little B minor chord with an extension. Now add the second guitar. Then we add the bass to it. It's basically 1 chord, but it sounds way cooler this way. Right? So that gives you this kind of faux Motown feel of chunk and rhythm. And Eric is playing the standard, but do a little bit of the sort of 4 on the floor Motown rhythm. Right? Hear that snare? All 4 beats. Boom, 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 boom. It's like no pop tunes were doing that until Motown started doing that. It's really interesting. So he's doing that. And again, we're stealing all these Motown cliches, but putting it within the context of a song that has this philosophical question of like, if you were to die and go to heaven, it'd be really, really boring. All right? Again, some cool bells. Listen for the bells. Just like, oh, I'm so excited. There's like songs with bells in this thing. I love it. This is Heaven Must Be Boring, my sort of faux Motown tune. Eric, if you please.
Supposed to be when you see for me what's true to you. Oh, heaven must be really boring. If you think about it logically, yeah. All the angels must be snoring. for your past glory. How can you tell me that's what the truth is supposed to be? For you, what's true won't do. No clue, you're through. Heaven must be really boring. La, la, la. If you think about it logically, yeah. All the angels must be snoring. La, la, la. Who could stand perfection for eternity? Not me. Who could stand perfection for eternity? Not me. Not me. Not me. Who could stand perfection? 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 I said, who could stand perfection? Not me. Thank you so much.
Now, if there are any Mystery Science Theater 3000 fans out there, you'll notice that in the chorus we did la la la. That's a total Mystery Science Theater. You know, when he says, next Sunday AD, la la la. Total Mystery Science Theater nod in the middle of that song.
Have you ever not had an audience with Mystery Science Theater
That's true.
fans? I don't
Totally.
think that's ever happened.
Totally.